another story time. I've not got that many left now. Maybe 4 more after this one. We are going to do a double bubble this evening. So this evening we're going to go through 2 chapters. Chapter 8, what to expect as unschooled children grow, and chapter 9, wow, teens, screens and socialisation all in one chapter, which you won't be surprised to know I couldn't cover everything, but we dip into how different unschooling is when it comes to those hot topics, and also why, and kind of the shifts that people can make. So I do pack a lot in there, but there's certainly more to be said. If you're interested in the more, the deschooling and the more, you are very welcome to join me next week when I start a new series, which is Deschooling to Unschooling. It's only 5 nights. There's a private Facebook group for it. There will be lives, 5 lives. They'll be longer than this one. They'll be an hour each. And it will be a chance to kind of walk through the deschooling process, take a look at some of the common stumbling blocks along the way. They're not really stumbling blocks because all those things contribute to your deschooling process and to the learning, the new learning, the unlearning, the relearning, all the fun stuff. Kind of reflecting on how deschooling works. So even if you've been unschooling for years and years and years, kind of having a look at how deschooling works, and really why it's essential to unschooling specifically. So that's next week. You can find a sign up link in the comments, I think. And it leads really nicely on from talking about chapter 9, teens, screens and socialisation. Our rethinking, our rewiring around how we approach those topics. I'm going to start with chapter 8, which is what to expect as unschooled children grow. Because once you have been unschooling for a while, a shift happens in your family and a shift happens in your children about how they approach the world, how they see the world. I mean, we talked the other night a little bit about how they interact differently with, not just with their peers, but intergenerationally as well. There's a removal of hierarchy, and hierarchy has an impact, and the removal of it has an impact in terms of how they relate to other people around them, and how they view, it's not even how they view learning, but how they experience learning is very different. Their experience of the world is different. Their relationships with family, with friends, with community is different. The way they live is different, and how they learn is different. It's all different. And throughout the book, I kind of talk about how school does things and the effect that that can have on our children. And I talk about how unschooling families approach things and the impact that those choices also have on our children, because there's always an impact. There's always kind of consequences, these natural consequences of the choices that we make about the life that we're living with our children. And one of the things that I see is, as our children grow up, the difference between schooled children and unschooled children becomes noticeably bigger and increasingly more obvious. Although I'm really tentative about saying that, because in the early days some of those things are also different, because we talked about reading the other day. You know, that's one of the biggest differences, that unschooled children en masse don't learn to read at the age of 4, and the way that they choose, the clothes they choose to wear or not wear. Some children choose not to wear shoes or not to brush their hair. So I guess it's a broad statement to say those differences get broader, but certainly their attitude towards relationships, friends, family, their attitude towards learning those things become quite obvious, I think, especially when we are in the habit of comparing our children to their schooled peers, which I don't really recommend, and it's not overly helpful. But a lot of families, a lot of parents have this natural tendency to do that because we spring back to our experience, we spring back to what we know, we kind of relate to what's going on around us, maybe other children in our immediate family, like cousins, for example, or maybe you've even got a child, one child in school and one child being unschooled, or just the kids down your street. It happens, this comparison, and we can see the difference, and it can unnerve us. The truth is that school children often appear to be doing better because we've been told about these markers that tell us how well children are doing, and schooled children are often, you often know where they are in relation to those markers, and frequently children appear to be doing better, learning more, shall we say, or getting on in life more, growing up more, being more independent, and they do all of those things faster than children who are unschooled, and they primarily do those things faster because they're in a situation where they're shoehorned into doing those things faster. They are in a position where they are made to be independent and to get on with things, and they're told through this process of consequences and rewards what to do and what they should be doing and what outcomes they should be having, and those are the things they press towards, whereas our children don't have those markers, and certainly as they grow up they are frequently less interested in those markers, and it's a great relief not to have that pressure and that expectation on them. And also, in terms of independence and growing towards independence, our children do that in their own time when they're ready, and that's perfectly okay. They will do it in their own time and when they're ready, and we're not rushing them into it. But school children go through this process whereby it's kind of forced upon them, and so it appears that they are doing much better. But we have children who are growing and developing according to their own timeline. So they play longer, we talked about that the other day. They accept support from others for longer, and I say for longer, I mean like forever. Like this natural tendency to like ask for help and seek help and give help and support each other, which is what happens outside the hierarchical system of I'm better than you and I can do this on my own, and hyper independence, because they've been brought up in a culture, in a family where that's okay, where as adults we help and support them as much as they need until they no longer need it, and so they accept that support for as long as they need it. They're usually much more relaxed about the idea of taking exams. They may or may not take them at all. They might take them when they're younger. They might take them when they're 16. They might wait till they're older. They might go to college. They might do it online. It's much broader view of what is available to them, and the conditions under which they access those things, because of the lack of those pressures and expectations that have been put on them by others. It all comes from within themselves when they are ready. But it also means that we have this noticeable difference between their schooled peers and their unschooled and our unschooled children. So really this chapter is about leaning into that even more, being happy with that, being content with that, how to wrestle with that, how to not compare our children and to really lean into what they are doing and the joy they're experiencing and who they are and the things that they can do, and where their motivation is. Because one of the things that clearly happens is they know themselves better and grow in confidence in themselves, so they are really clear about what they want to do and how they want to do it and when they want to do it, and that might not be on the same timeline as their schooled peers. So this chapter is really about what to expect in a very broad way, because the other thing that unschooled children don't do is all follow the same path, because they're all, we're helping them to navigate what they want to do when they want to do it, which again is coming from within them instead of being shoved down a pipeline and being told what to do and when. So that therefore means that unschooled children are doing a huge variety of different things at different times, so there isn't a set timeline, so to speak. This chapter is kind of largely based on my experience over the last 18 years, being in the unschooled community, being an active part of the local home ed scene, working with parents, the online communities that I'm active in and part of, connecting with and working with other unschooling advocates and facilitators, and a massive reassurance that whilst things do look differently for unschooled children, they do in fact manage to get to adulthood and be full participants in the world. But it leads really nicely into chapter 9, which specifically talks about teens and screens and socialisation, particularly the teens and socialisation aspects, which look again very different to their schooled counterparts. Obviously it's only one chapter that addresses some really big questions. The teen question mostly focusing around exams and this idea of cocooning, which is quite well known of in unschooling circles. Teens have this natural tendency to do a lot of things. So there's a lovely book by Sarah Blakemore, which talks about the teenage brain and how long that process takes, like right up into your mid-20s actually. And there's some common things that happen, like risk taking is quite common. Swapping sleep cycles is really common, so staying up later and then sleeping later into the day. And cocooning, so for some teens there is a withdrawal and a kind of coming in to themselves, and these are things that there isn't room for in the education system. So when we take our children out of the education system and we are leaning into these natural tendencies, these things can come as a bit of a, oh, hang on, what's happening now? What is this? Like, my child wants to stay up late and won't get up late. How are we going to do the regular activities that we were once doing? Or my child's like cocooning and going in on themselves and doesn't really want to go out at all. Like, there's a shift in what they're doing. And being aware of the risk taking and how that presents itself in unschooling families, which of course leads to the question of how are they going to get GCSEs if they're staying up all night, which has beautiful answers like, well, if we know that learning can happen any time, then it can happen at 2 o'clock in the morning. It doesn't have to happen between the hours of 9 and 3. And you don't have to take a GCSE when you're 16. You can take it when you're 14 or when you're 25 or 80. It doesn't matter. So that chapter kind of touches on teens. It touches on, I'm going to come back to screens because I feel that's a little bit different, but the socialisation aspect, when our children shift from adults being the primary person that they turn to, like the parents and carers being the primary person that they turn to, and they start to be aware. It's where kind of the idea of peer pressure comes from, but starting to be aware of their peers and how to interact with their peers and seeking out their opinions about things. And of course that's not really the question people ask when they talk about socialisation for home educated kids. They want to know, you know, how they're going to make friends when all the children go to school, which is quite frankly ludicrous. There is so much out there for home educated children, like groups to join now, that it's I think quite honestly the biggest problem now is showing some discernment about what you do and where you do it and who with, and finding things that are a good fit for your particular child. And the other challenge that people come up with is children that don't want to socialise, which quite frankly, as long as they've got the option to when they're ready, I wouldn't be forcing anybody into a social situation that they weren't comfortable with, whilst also making your child aware that these options are there, and maybe trying different things. It doesn't have to be a group of 30 children. It can be meeting one other family at the park or a cafe, or I don't know, at a museum. Just plan to be in the same museum at the same time, so that you kind of pass each other, so there's kind of flowing interaction. There's lots and lots of ways to connect with others. I mean, online is obviously another one as well, which so that will lead into screens. There's lots of ways to socialise, and of course socialisation is not doesn't just have to be with the child who is of a similar age. You know, it's any social interaction. It can be posting a letter at the post office, it can be the librarian, it can be the local shopkeeper, it can be the neighbours, it can be the grandparents. All of that is building a picture of how to communicate and interact with other people out in the community. And if that starts at home with communicating confidently with you or with a sibling, and then it grows from there, then that's fine. And of course, like I said, we have this screens, making friends normally via gaming, making connections with other people via special interests, and that can happen via I mean, I say gaming, but now there's forums where you can connect over artwork, you can connect over, you know, your favourite book series, films, anything. And kind of moving or challenging our thinking around some mainstream narratives around screen time. We, as an unschooling family, don't have screen time at all. We used to when my boys were younger, so up until about the age of about 4 or 5, when we started meeting other unschooling families who introduced this idea that it might be okay for us to not or to have more than 2 hours of screen time a day. But my younger two have really never experienced any restrictions in terms of time on their screen use. And people say to me, you don't mean that they should be allowed to play on their tablet all day, do you? And actually in the beginning it might mean that. It might mean that because when you lift a restriction, the natural human urge is to binge on that thing that you previously had restricted. but in time it just becomes the same as picking up a book or doing a painting or, you know, going down to the beach. It just becomes part of the fabric of what happens on a day-to-day basis, and it holds no more fear, I guess, than anything else that my child is doing. And in the beginning, when we first started to move to not restricting their screen time, we did two things very intentionally. One, we stopped calling it screen time, because I heard this idea that we don't use the phrase paper time, so we don't, or outdoor time, so we don't like bring together collectively anything on paper, like doing a drawing or reading a book, and collectively call that paper time, and then restrict what they're doing based on how much time they've been using paper. Or the same with outdoor time. We don't say you've had enough outdoor time now. You know, we see that our children are outside kind of bouncing on a trampoline or doing the gardening or riding a scooter, or looking at the stars. We don't bundle it all together and call it outdoor time. So we stopped using the phrase screen time and started to look at what they were actually doing on whilst they were using their tablets, their phone, PC, whatever it was they were on at the time. And the second thing we did to make the transition easier, well, for us, this was a decision we made, was instead of making a big announcement that we, you know, there wasn't going to be screen time and they could watch whatever they wanted whenever they wanted to, we just simply started saying yes more. So when they asked, we said yes. So when they said, can we watch, it was probably CBeebies at the time, we said yes. And when they said, you know, can I play Minecraft, we said yes. And when they said, can we play games on the computer, we said yes. And we just simply kept saying yes, until they didn't really ask anymore. They just felt confident enough to not ask us for permission, because that's the habit that they were in. But they felt confident that the answer would be yes, so they stopped asking, and started asking new questions like, can we buy this app? Or can we download, you know, this platform so I can talk to my friend? Can you help me sign up for an account? So it became a different question. And so that's how we kind of transitioned into kind of removing the restriction. And people have loads of questions around screen time and safety and online safety, which are all very, very valid questions. One of the things I notice in unschooled families, because of the quality of relationships and the relational model that things are based on, you know, we have very open conversations about being safe, about you know, being aware of who might be on the other side of the screen when you're playing games, about connecting with, particularly when they were young, you know, only connecting with people that we knew, and then as they got older, how to be more discerning, how to put things in place, how to be cautious about private messages and such the like. You know, the conversations changed as they got older, but the key was we were always having those conversations, and we still have those conversations. We still have those conversations now, but it was kind of like an ongoing part of the process, and trusting that our children would come to us for help if they needed it. Also, we spent an awful lot of time online with our children, gaming with our children, you know, playing the same apps that our children play, so that we were really, even when my son didn't want me to play there was one game, I think it was like Plants vs Zombies, and he really didn't want me to play. In fact, I'm not even sure you could play at that point like together, but I downloaded it as well, and I played loads of it so that I understood what he was talking about, and I understood how he could connect with other people, so that I was aware of what was going on in the game. And now things have changed because they're much older, so they have taken that on themselves, particularly my older two, who are 18 and 16. But as I said, we still have ongoing conversations where things are changing and technology changes. But it feels just very natural to have those conversations and to laugh about things when maybe they go a bit wrong or someone gets a silly DM. But all these questions are really about digging deep into what we think we know, and challenging those perspectives, but doing it in a way that feels good. Not to say that it won't feel a bit nerve-wracking or a bit scary, I guess. But not doing things just because I say, oh, don't have screen time. But to look at that for yourself and go, how can we do this as a family, or how can we move towards it if we're ready to. And that, for me, is where deschooling comes in. Really taking a moment to sit with those things and see really how you feel about them and what you can change, because you can't change everything at once. That would be overwhelming for everybody, especially your children, and likely cause quite some distress at the kind of an overwhelming shift in an approach to what you're doing. So being able to sit and say, what can we change and what do we feel comfortable with and what is right for our family to change right now, is part of the deschooling process. So I'm going to invite you to join me for the Deschooling to Unschooling event next week. You can find the link in the chat, I think, or maybe at the top of the live or something. If not, it's on the Facebook page, because I've been putting it out there for a couple of days. That's next week. It's Monday to Friday. It's in a private Facebook group. It's lives again. They'll be an hour long, but they're all recorded, so if you sign up you will get the recordings of those, and they also stay on the Facebook group for 30 days, I think. So you'd be very welcome to come and join that, and to take away with you from this evening that really unschooling questions, whether it's about what unschooling looks like as our children grow up, what does it look like when they're 10 and 12 and 14 and 26, or whether it's about how teenagers are different, unschooled teenagers are different, and how they navigate, or how to navigate the teenage years, or screen time, or socialisation, or even burnout, or your child not leaving the house, or your child not committing to any one activity, or you signing up for things that your child then doesn't want to go to, whatever it is, whatever your unschooling question is, it has an unschooling answer. And so I'm always really super keen that people connect with other unschooling families, so whether that's online or in real life nearby. It's one of the things that will make the biggest difference to your unschooling journey. I want to tell you about tomorrow, where we will be looking at chapter 10, which is how not to be a teacher. It's one of the things that people find the trickiest, the personal trickiest thing, and even if you've never been a teacher, the draw to being teacher-like and to imparting knowledge, particularly when your child shows an interest in something, is I mean, I was a teacher, so it was heavily ingrained in me. But even just as an adult, the desire to impart all the knowledge of the world to our children is strong. So this chapter is about how not to do that, how not to be the teacher, and the things that you are doing instead. So hopefully you'll be able to join me for that. Are you curious about unschooling and want to know more? Perhaps you're on the edge of starting this adventure, or maybe you've been doing this a while, but you're looking for inspiration. After more than 13 years of unschooling 4 children and over 5 years supporting others on the same path, I have a vast library of resources that I'm happy to share with you for free, whatever stage of your journey you're in. You can check out the link in the description of the podcast, or you can head over to my website at liveplaylearn.org and look for the free resources tab. And there you will find lots of things to inspire you to keep living, learning and playing together. I said that the wrong way round, didn't I? Anyway, it's also a great way to make sure that you don't miss an episode of the podcast, which we will get back to now.